Today's guest is Jill Dougherty, CNN's foreign affairs correspondent, who's held domestic and foreign correspondent roles since 1983. One of Jill's first stints with CNN was as a White House correspondent, where she reported on the presidential activities of George W. Bush and the Clinton administrations. Since then, Jill has served as CNN's Moscow bureau chief and U.S. affairs editor for CNN International. Today, we'll get her take on foreign affairs, discuss her career, and learn from her experience as a breast cancer survivor. Jill, welcome to Give and Take.
Thank you very much, Julie.
You've been a television reporter for over 25 years, and some have said that women have a shorter shelf life in the business, if you will, than men. Let's take a listen to what your colleague Campbell Brown had to say on the subject.
Are we judged in different ways, and are there different standards oftentimes for women, in television news especially? Yes, absolutely. I think that's often the case. Looks and appearance always for women becomes an issue in a way it never does for men. Aging, there's no question that men are allowed to age much more so on television than women are. I mean, we have a shorter shelf life.
Well, I think she's absolutely right. I mean, look at TV. You know, you have men who are 60, 70, probably maybe not 80s, but definitely 70s, and they're still going strong, and they can be bald and they can be gray-haired, etc. And for women, it really still is a different ballgame. There are different standards. Now, I consider myself very lucky that, with gray hair and not exactly predictable TV look, that I've been able to survive. But I think that one of the things that helped was because I was working for CNN International, which is the one that you see around the world, in hotels. It's kind of a different approach. It's more directly news-oriented, a little less like what you would think of as American TV. So maybe that helped me, and I did foreign assignments.
Well, let's discuss that. Do you think that the Americans in general have different perceptions about women and aging than they do abroad, and that people abroad maybe are more tolerant of women gracefully aging on camera?
I think definitely in some European countries, there's no question that women who have gray hair, who look their age, who don't get facelifts, are more acceptable. It's just the way it is. I mean, in the United States, we have really strict standards when you think of it. But it's not only for, I think, women of a certain age. It's for teenagers or 20-year-olds, It's harder here, I think, to really be yourself, especially in this business, and especially when there are the cosmetic treatments that can turn you into whatever you want. To be yourself is not that easy.
Do you think this whole focus on looks is one of the reasons why we don't see as many women anchoring shows? For example, the Sunday morning political shows, there's no women anchoring them. Or even guests on the news shows. Men outnumber women as guests on all the political shows 4-to-1, which is really an astounding statistic.
They do. I think that's kind of a little bit of a different area because traditionally you had men doing the heavy lifting in political and international reporting. So that's a carryover. I think that there are very intelligent women who can do this, but that's the tradition. That's a little bit harder. I'd say, when you're in those areas, the brain power is very important, and tradition takes over. When it's in regular local television, I think a lot of it is cosmetic.
And it's interesting because there are some parallels in a way between women in politics and women in media. We still have a country that is 52% women, yet women only hold 25% of elected office. So in these clear positions of power, whether it be in media or politics, it seems as if many people still want to get the hard news, so to speak, from men.
I don't know. It's kind of a time warp, isn't it? I mean, you do have women in politics, but not as many as there should be. And I remember a comment, and I think I remember who said it, but I'm not even going to go there. But there was a male person who was on television who talked about Hillary Clinton. Remember, I wouldn't want her to become president because I wouldn't want her to watch her grow old. Do you remember that comment?
Yes.
It was absolutely outrageous. I mean, we can watch him grow older, and what's the matter with growing older anyway? Let's have some maturity.
So what can we do as a society to try to counteract these prejudices, if you will, against women?
I think that the media, as they're developing, are going to change. Because right now, you don't have just 3 big networks and their evening TV. You have blogs, you have like .com. When I do live shots, I do .com live shots for CNN. I think that the media, because there are just so many more ways that you can get your message out and people can participate, that I think there'll be more space for people who are themselves. They may not look the part, they may look different, they may have different ideas, but I really firmly believe it's going to reflect society more.
Let's talk about that, the rise of social media and how that's impacted journalism. Do you think that it's made journalism better? Is it easier to get sources, or do you think that now the standard of sources have become lower?
Oh boy, great question. There's no question that doing research, getting information is 1,000,000% easier right now with the new media. There's no question. Is it all correct? You don't know. Can the blogosphere beat up on people? Yes. There are great advantages and great disadvantages to these new media, but there's no going back. So I think you just have to use them to communicate with people, to get their feedback, and to try to, wend your way through all of that information out there.
Yeah, one of the things I worry about, I'm a parent of 3 young boys, is whether or not, when my children get older, how they're going to react to the news and how they're going to get the news. If they're primarily only getting the news from the internet, where there still aren't the same kind of standards as there are in other mediums, how informed are they going to be? And I really wonder if people are more informed or less informed than they were on the hard news 10 or 15 years ago.
That is another really good point, because I'll give you an example. I read newspapers, a lot of newspapers online, and I have, in effect, like clipping services that I get from various newspapers that target stories that I'm interested in, Russia, Mideast, etc. So that is all coming to me. I'm looking for information in a particular area. What I miss is sitting down with a newspaper and coming upon the unexpected story, the thing that opens up my eyes and changes the way that I look at the world. And when you're using these media, you tend to go after what you want. And sometimes you go after what you agree with. Mm-hmm. And I think that's not good, because what I want to do is be challenged by ideas that I don't necessarily agree with.
Well, let's talk about that. For example, in the coverage of Iran, how did the coverage of Iran change in terms of the sourcing? When you had so much information coming from Twitter and other sources, how did that impact the news story?
Well, Twitter was really revolutionary in that period, just coincidentally, that people were on the streets, because people were organizing those demonstrations with Twitter and with the social media. So it was crucial to CNN, because that was one of the only ways that you could really understand what was going on. It's extremely valuable in that sense. I think in a number of countries where people are communicating not in traditional ways because they don't have the means to do that, but they're using social media.
Did it frustrate you, though, with the Iranian elections, to not be able to be on the ground covering these disturbances?
Well, there's so many people who would want to do that from CNN. You'd have to stand in line. But it is absolutely, I would love to go to Iran.